for the worst that seems like is yet to come.
Yeah, exactly. And a needed update, because this is the epicenter when it comes to the coronavirus here in the United States. And what I took away from it is he reminded everybody, they're making progress in terms of setting up hospital beds, like you said, the Billie Jean King Tennis Center, also at the Javits Center, hotels, and just saying how that we can, transform these places to make sure that there are hospital beds, moving patients that don't have the virus out of hospitals, because the hospitals are needed to treat those patients that do have the virus. He did remind us it's going to be weeks, it's going to be tough, and it's a recognition that he said that we all need to make at this point, and an understanding of that. He reminded us 20,000 beds, that's what the city had going into the virus. They need 3 times that. And again, saying, April's going to be a tough month. We know that already, and that it might continue into May. So again, this is the moving dates that we are seeing, certainly from the hardest hit areas here in the United States.
Absolutely. And, that point about it being the hardest hit area at the moment is really important, because this is going to continue. One of the things I took away from our conversation with Dr. Andy Pekosh down at Johns Hopkins is, this is something that is going to move through the country in different ways, just in the same way that it's moved across the world. Dr. Pekosh mentioned things that have happened in Asia, places like Hong Kong and Singapore, and obviously elsewhere in China, where they have gotten their hands around it to some extent. We hear some slight levels of optimism, or bits of optimism from Italy in other places. So, in any case, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is next. Carol? I'm Jason Kelly. She's Carol Masser. This is Bloomberg.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
My savings for the first time. And I'm 69 years old, and I wasn't looking forward to doing that.
90% of his business comes during the summer months. If the doors don't open before Memorial Day, and if this drags on into July, Masango says that is a real big hit. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report. I'm John Tucker.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
To be in the markets now, you need nerves of steel. I mean, we're not supposed to be hysterical. And Bloomberg surveillance.
Let's just start with something extreme.
What are you comparing this to? Tom Keene and Jonathan Turrell.
Your call, your message to your clients on a morning like this morning.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
What are you doing to adjust your economic growth numbers?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Fiscal stimulus could really shape things in the months ahead.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 2 hours to go until actually 1 hour to go until we wrap up the first quarter. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all trading lower right now. Stocks are lower after rising 17% over the past 7 days as the S&P 500 index heads toward its worst quarterly loss since the financial crisis. Right now, the S&P 500 index is down 19 points. That is a drop of just about 0.7%. The Dow's lower by 132 points, down 0.6, and NASDAQ is down 17. That is a drop of 0.2%. 10 years up 13.30 seconds right now with a yield of 0.68%. Gold down 2.4%, 15.84 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 2% now at $20.48 a barrel. The benchmark turned lower in the afternoon session, led by banks after spending most of the morning higher after a consumer confidence measure and a regional manufacturing reading fell less than expected. As for gold, right now gold is down 2.4% at $15.84 the ounce. Unprecedented government spending and monetary stimulus lifted stocks from a rout that reached 33%, but the hit to GDP shaping up to be monumental, with Goldman Sachs now forecasting a 34% contraction in the second quarter before a sharp rebound. As for the costs of the stimulus, Mickey Levy is chief economist at Berenberg Capital Markets.
The critical question is, do we pay for this? And the answer is absolutely. You're going to pay either in the form of higher taxes, lower government services, and even if it doesn't show up as higher inflation or higher interest rates, we pay for this one way or the other.
Industry group IATA is predicting airlines will burn through as much as $61 billion worldwide in the second quarter, warning that carriers could run out of cash as travel hits a low point in the coronavirus crisis. Among airline names today, higher across the board, UAL up 4.8%, American Airlines Group up 1.2%. We've got Delta up 1.7%, Southwest higher by 2.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics. We've got a team waiting for us on the phone. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg. She's on the phone from Long Island City. We want to start with Andrew Husby. He is U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Also on the phone, he's joining us from New Jersey. Let's get first to California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Czechoslovakia and other parts of the globe that have moved aggressively to advance protocols on face masks or other kinds of face shields and the like. We have a team that is considering guidance in this space to make recommendations whether or not we think this is appropriate. But let me caution on this topic a number of things. We are in real need of traditionally surgical masks and these N95 masks. We are out there sourcing them from all around the globe. We have distributed some 32.4 million N95 masks to to date, 32.4 million N95 masks, but we have ordered over 100 million of these masks. We need 100 plus million N95 masks just to meet the needs within our healthcare delivery system. The concern we have when we talk about face coverings in masks is people run to get the N95s, or they run to get the surgical masks, of which we are procuring tens of millions of surgical masks at the same time. And so we want to be cautious in this space. We want to be guided by science. And I'll just say this respectfully, science is a bit incomplete in this space. A lot of people are promoting face coverings and masks. Others caution that it is not a substitute for physical distancing, which it is not, and that it could create a sense that it is and may reduce the protocols that have worked so effectively so far here in the state of California. But know that we are looking to put out guidance on this. We'll put out our recommendations in short order as it relates to face coverings. And those recommendations will include the principal obligation we all have to continue our physical distancing, our social distancing, to wash our hands. And if we are putting face coverings on, we'll lay out guidelines in specific terms of what that means and what it doesn't mean. The last thing we want are people putting on coverings and moving them, their hands, not washing their hands, and potentially creating additional issues, people getting the wrong kind of impression that somehow now they're absolutely immune from contracting the virus and the like. But I know that this is becoming a major issue all across the United States. CDC has implied they'll be putting out some guidelines. I know the President himself and others have made reference to the same. We get this question all the time. When you go to a grocery store, people are trying to practice appropriate physical distancing. You feel like you're not necessarily capable of doing that in a short queue. The appropriateness of having these masks or a version of face covering. We recognize that anxiety, and we want to meet that in terms of recommending specific strategies. And so expect in the next 24 or so hours that the state of California will put out more prescriptive guidelines in that space. We also are very proud here in California. We had incredible leadership that is demonstrable in the state by Cesar Chavez. That leadership was recognized formally as this day is every year, Cesar Chavez Day. And in the spirit of contribution, in the spirit of service, in the spirit of meeting this moment, we are also announcing an effort to do more and do better to protect our seniors in the state of California. We have 5.3 million Californians that are 65 years and older. And we've been doing some remarkable things at the local level to check in on our seniors, wellness checks to make sure they're getting their medications, making sure they're getting their prescriptions. But we need to step things up significantly. And that's what we are announcing here today, a statewide initiative, working with our partners at the AARP, working with our partners at Alzheimer's, American Lung Association, Cancer Association, Heart Association, working with our local partners, our CERT teams that are part of our mutual aid program, traditionally utilized in preparation for our wildfire seasons, our Listos program, which we rolled out a few months ago to do the same. We're now reconstituting all of those programs and building capacity and partnership to significantly increase our connectivity to our seniors, to check in, not just for wellness.
So you've been listening to California Governor Gavin Newsom giving an update on the virus in his state, saying 25,000 people have signed up for healthcare surge. So he's reaching out, of course, to the healthcare community like we are seeing in any of these hard-hit communities, asking for retired healthcare professionals to come in and give a hand. So we'll continue to monitor and bring you any headlines as they are known. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to say that there's a story in the Bloomberg that's a hopeful one that basically citing some comments from Governor Newsom and some other West Coast leaders that social distancing does seem to be working so far, like a little bit of optimism that is at least slowing the spread, allowing hospitals to get ready. So it's a good lesson, especially for folks outside of the New York region where obviously this feels like the epicenter and is the epicenter. But for those places in other parts of the country still preparing, social distancing works. That is the message that we seem to be hearing from medical experts and from government leaders.
It's so simplistic, but if you look at the trends around the world where those have been hit harder initially by the virus, that is what ultimately gets it under control. And that's why you're hearing continuously from mayors, from governors, to continue to do so. And that's where you're seeing some of the dates, Jason, being put out at this point. All right, let's get back to the markets.
Let's do it. Economics talk. That's what is on the agenda now. Andrew Husby still with us, U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, as is Alex Harris. But Andrew, I want to start with you. We are getting some data starting to come through that gives us some sense of the economic underpinnings here. Tell us about it.
Sure. Today's data we got was a consumer confidence report from the Conference Board. And the key there was that the drop was much weaker. Effectively, the drop was smaller than we expected. So I think what that tells us is that, number one, the survey, the cutoff date was basically the middle of March 19th. So you didn't get this last 10 days or so of really ramped up lockdowns across now more than 3/5 of U.S. states. But what I think it tells us is that, one, consumers were in good shape prior to this all really hitting hard this month, so that's a positive. And secondly, it tells you that you have to be cautious about what consumers say versus what they do. I think the data we're going to see in the coming weeks, both on vehicle sales tomorrow, we're going to see a jobs report this Friday, and then we're also going to see a new claims number later this week. And I think that data right now is a bit timelier. Maybe not the payrolls report, but the claims reading is going to be the one that really, I think, is going to set the stage for a much clearer deterioration in the numbers in April. So too soon to tell right now, but I think the data should illuminate that later this week.
And Andrew, that number right now, at least according to the Bloomberg survey, is now looking at about 3.5 million. That compares with almost 3.3 million the week before. We've got to start looking at these current data points, but we also do have to keep in mind that the U.S. economy is shut down. These numbers are going to be off the charts.
Exactly, yeah. So certainly when you look at the penciled in drops that most analysts and we have for the second quarter, these are unprecedented declines in the U.S. economy that we're going to see. Even on the more limited end, it's the economy shut down. A stimulus bill can only do so much at the moment. The goal right now is just to keep people mostly whole, to come out the other side in a way that isn't creating lasting damage for both households and businesses, and that's still going to be a challenge, and we'll see more on that in the coming weeks, measures to offset some of that.
All right, Andrew Husby, thank you so much. Really appreciate your context. As always, U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Let's shift now to the bond side of the equation. Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Long Island City. All right, Ms. Harris, take us through what's happening on the bond side of the market.
Oh, it's actually kind of interesting. At this point, I'm sort of looking less at price action and more at the depth and liquidity of the market, because I think there's still underlying issues, and this is going to be a problem, seeing as, we just had, the government just passed $2 trillion of stimulus.
What is it, Alex? What is it about the price action that you think we need to really take note of here?
I think it's still volatile. I think there's still a lack of liquidity underlying the Treasury market, and the long end is still having a hard time getting moving. And I'm seeing that from indicators and liquidity sheets I get from various people on the street, that it's still a problem. And that's also what makes, I think, this latest this Fed program that was announced this morning, this foreign repo facility, very interesting, because it's a platform in which foreign central banks can go and they can give their treasuries to the Fed and in exchange get cash. And so, at first glance, it's like, oh, well, this is just providing dollar funding to central banks, in those emerging markets that might not be able to access it. But I think, after people sort of spend some time with it this morning, I think the takeaway is really like, oh, no, this is actually a backstop for the Treasury market, because what can happen then is central banks instead of looking and trying to sell your treasuries into an illiquid market, in this like fire sale, as we saw a couple of weeks ago,
right.
They now have an outlet, and now, the Fed can take on some of this treasury supply. And look, there's a lot coming in the second quarter. I mean, not to mention the fact that Treasury just announced another 2 cash management bills like about 10, 15 minutes ago. I mean, they're really starting to load up the market here with supply, and the long end and the coupons are going to get hit here. And so now it's like you have another outlet to take some of that supply out of the market. And so I think it's also a win for the Treasury market here.
And so it's interesting, Alex, as we try and take stock, pun intended, of everything that the Fed has done here. As you talk to investors, are they giving the Fed the same sort of positive report card that it feels like we're hearing from investors? And a follow-up to that is, what more can and should the Fed be doing here?
Well, what more can the Fed they're in every market. And I think this is sort of the astounding thing, and what, after things kind of calm down and we get something that looks or somewhat normal again, I think this is really what people are going to be looking at, is they're going to be reviewing, well, what just happened? Because really, if you look at it, I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing now in the way in which central banks, particularly the Fed, have had to react here, that this is an indictment of the last decade of policy of very, very low interest rates, of, sort of continuing to encourage companies and sovereigns to load up on debt. And this is really, this is all about the great deleveraging that Ray Dalio talks about, and it's not pretty. And so I think this is now going to become an indictment on what low for longer really looks like, and the dangers of what happens when you sit at too low for too long. And I think it's also a good indictment of what did post-crisis financial regulation actually do here, because in some ways, markets aren't functioning normally, and I think everyone knows. Well,
Alex, we've got the Fed. The Fed has become the ultimate market maker and buyer and seller of everything, just to make sure that the market keeps working. And so it's not things as normal, business as usual.
No, and it's not things as normal, and this is the problem. And so now I think this is why this now becomes an indictment on post-crisis regulation and the Fed, considering that you can't have the dealers come in and do the intermediation that you wanted. Like, this is now what the discussion is going to turn to, as things sort of start to settle down, and we can really go, okay, we just saw what these regulations can do, and did they work? Did they not work? And if the Fed had to come in and save every single asset class, is that a success?
Right.
So, lots to think about.
Yeah, it is a lot to think about. It'll be interesting to see what the Fed does continue to do, either new actions or enhancing existing actions. Alex Harris, always counting on you for some smart insights. We appreciate it. Bond reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Long Island City. Let's get over to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the business world. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. We have got just about 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell here. In fact, 43 minutes before we wrap up the first quarter. Let's begin with what's happening in markets right now. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they are all lower. S&P 500 index on track for its worst quarter since the financial crisis. Treasuries rose, the 10-year up 15-30 seconds with a yield now of 0.67%. Equity markets lower across the board, with the S&P down 39, down 1.5%. For the quarter, the S&P is down now by 19.9%. The Dow down 318 points, down 1.4%. NASDAQ lower by 79. That is a drop of 1%. Oil lower, down 2.4%. West Texas, gold lower, down 2.4% at $15.83. WTI, West Texas Intermediate crude, is higher today, up 1.6%, up 32 cents a barrel at $20.41. So again, recapping, gold lower by 2.5%. Oil, West Texas Intermediate, up by 1.6%. S&P lower by 39, a drop of 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, Carol Masser here with you, and I can safely say that as I look out my back window across my little suburb of New York City here, There are some kids playing video games. I just know that it's true. Maybe they should be on Zoom in a class. Maybe they should be doing some classwork, but they're playing video games. It's just a fact. Michael Pachter is video game technology analyst for Wedbush Securities. He joins us on the phone from Long Beach, California. I'm right, Michael, right? I mean, a lot of kids are playing video games. A lot of adults are playing video games right now.
Yeah, I just took a break for playing video games to take this call. So, yes, everybody's playing
I think you call that research, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
For
That's
me,
literally your job.
It is, absolutely.
So what do we know about the backdrop here? I mean, there's anecdotal evidence, but, I mean, you've got your hands on real data here, right?
Yeah, I do. But, realistically, there's two things we're going to do, whether we're indoors or outdoors. We're going to eat and we're going to entertain ourselves. And, it's intuitively obvious if we can't go to restaurants, we'll eat at home. If we can't go out to movie theaters and sporting events or even engage in physical activity, we're going to do that at home. And so, clearly we're seeing from internet service providers that internet usage is up. Verizon said up 75%. We got something yesterday from Comcast talking about Wi-Fi access. And so the question is just what are people doing with the internet? And the answer is obviously they're watching a lot of video and they're playing a lot of games. I mean, Spotify just said their usage is up. People are just entertaining themselves in place. Games are the most likely, beneficiary of this. You can do it on mobile, you can do it on tablets, you can do it on your TV, and people are doing that.
So are the supplies there to meet the demand? The Telegraph had a report that whether it's the UK or the US, there's definitely, people are out there doing, and playing video games. It's a great escape right now, especially those who are, feeling isolated from the rest of the world or from others. And the thing is, the demand, some of the consoles are completely sold out. So I'm just curious about supply.
Yeah, Nintendo Switch is the one that's impossible to get, and obviously they didn't plan for a pandemic, but they launched a game called Animal Crossing, which is actually pretty much a single-player game. Really fun though. It's like a life simulation. You farm and you trade, and it's a really really fun game. So that sales of that game are off the charts, and people are trying to get their hands on Switches. And I frankly think that's because there's a big demand for kids. Adults probably can play on PC or phone, or they have consoles. You're not seeing Xboxes and PlayStations sold out, though. So the Switch is really benefiting just because it's, the hot item right now, and they have the hot game.
Well, it's also interesting, you mentioned PCs because a lot of people, and I think Carol and I are both in this category, not the gamer category, but more a lot of folks are sort of amping up their work from home sort of setups. I mean, I know we boosted our internet speed just to deal not only with my needs broadcasting this show, but also in anticipation of more streaming and other things that the kids are doing with their schoolwork and things like that. So I do wonder how that plays through, especially the PC gaming part of the equation.
PC gamers total about 400 million people total, and that's a lot. Console gamers more like 250 million.
Interesting.
Mobile gamers 1.5 billion. So, the most frequently used device is a mobile phone, and you can play games like Candy Crush on your tablet as well. PC, the dominant games are games like Fortnite, League of Legends. So those are games that people play all the time. Console tends to be things like Madden and FIFA and Call of Duty. So, different types of experiences. And I think the right analogy is like going to a movie theater to see a feature-length film. That's what a console game is. And watching a YouTube video is what a mobile game is like. So, they're different types of activity for different types of devices, but all really engaging, and, people play them all day long.
Is it too early, though, to make some investment calls based on what's happening now? Does it make any sense to even think about that at this point, Michael?
Beyond the pandemic. The pandemic is clearly going to drive up the use case for, the month of March and probably for the entire June quarter. You'll probably see some people won over permanently. So you're going to get some people who weren't really gamers before who find that, this activity is really enjoyable. I actually think that we're on the verge of expanding the market just remarkably by streaming games, and that's Google's offering something called Stadia. I think Amazon's going to enter the fray. Microsoft and Sony each have products that allow you to play games on any device without a console or a PC. When that happens, and I think that starts this fall, and I think it grows over the next 5 to 7 years, it should double or triple demand for the content. So anybody who's got content is a beneficiary. Anybody who makes peripherals, controllers or keyboards, is a beneficiary. And we're working with an ETF called Gamer, GAMR, that's 90 some odd stocks in the video game and video game technology sector. That's the pure play. That's the easiest way to play it. You're going to get exposure across border, across industries, to a demographic that's going to expand a whole lot.
Right, Embracer, you've got Zynga, you've got Glue Mobile, you've got all the names in there.
Well, because also
pretty much everybody, other than big companies like Google, where gaming is not a big piece of their business, but will be someday. Amazon, same thing. But short of that, yes, you've got all the publishers, all the device makers, all the pure play mobile guys.
Well, and even, I believe, and keep me honest here, Michael, some of the semiconductor companies, too, and we talk about that with our internal research analysts all the time about how when you look at the NVIDIAs and others of the world, so much demand, it seems these days, and I guess this was both on the PC and the console side, is especially, there's some semiconductor demand that is driven by gaming, right?
Absolutely, and NVIDIA in particular, they make the high-end graphics cards. So that 400 million PC gamers, they need NVIDIA cards. The 250 million console players, they need NVIDIA cards.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Great context, and one of those things that totally makes sense when you think about how people are acting during this very unusual period. Michael Pachter is video game technology analyst for Wedbush Securities, joining us on the phone from Long Beach, California. Carol.
I just think of it was mid-March when we heard E3, the video game conference, was canceled because of coronavirus fears, and it made me, that was one of the things, along with the sports events, when all of these things started being canceled, because that's a huge event, so crucial to the industry, but just a reminder of the lockdown that we would soon all be facing as the world, and certainly the nation as we know it, was shutting down.
Seems like 100 years ago.
It does. That's why I had to look back. It was March 11th.
Good Lord.
All right. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we're going to check out a news from the nation's capital. This is Bloomberg.
Stocks remain modestly lower in the final hour as the market prepares to wrap up its worst quarter since the financial crisis. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 199. The S&P 500 down 26. The Nasdaq Composite is down 40. Southwest Airlines will offer the first all-cargo flights in its history as passenger demand dries up. Only pilots and other crew will be on board. Cargo will be carried in the bellies of its jets. Passenger cabins will be empty. Apple is asking its retail store employees to temporarily become remote tech support staff. All of Apple's 458 stores outside China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong are closed. All of its retail employees continue to receive full pay and benefits. Separately, Apple has acquired the mobile weather service Dark Sky for an undisclosed price. Apple currently gets its data for its iPhone weather app from the Weather Channel. It could use the purchase to revamp the weather app. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights.
And here we go. Match underway. Cover on Rowan. Wait a second.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with the TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis of the latest WrestleMania, turn on the WWE podcast. Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
It's good to be here tonight. It's an empty building. But
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
To meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
A pack needs someone to follow. Don't look now, but they're behind you. Bloomberg Daybreak.
Could we see the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Imports declined 2.8%.
On Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, Carol, we talked about it at the top of the show. In addition to, obviously, a big push on the medical side, some more talk of stimulus infrastructure. Remember that? This is a throwback.
I love that Washington dusting off infrastructure idea. So we're going to get into that and everything you need to know out of the nation's capital. We'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top business stories, and let's get another check on the trading day. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, Carol Master. 28 minutes to go now until we wrap up the quarter. Lows of the day with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Have been higher earlier on, but right now, a 46-point loss in the S&P 500 index, down 1.8%. For the quarter, that means a loss right now of 20.2%, also the same as the year-to-date column, obviously. The Dow is down 384 points, a drop of 1.7%, and NASDAQ now by 106. That is a drop of 1.4%. Solita Marcelli is Deputy Chief Investment Officer at UBS, and on Bloomberg Television this morning, she told us her firm's high net worth clients do remain upbeat longer term.
What we have seen is that short-term optimism dip as the market tanked, but what we also have seen that among these clients who mostly own their businesses is that even if short-term optimism took a hit, in the long run, a significant majority of our clients are still optimistic about the economy, about the markets.
Goldman Sachs Group, meanwhile, does expect the U.S. economy to experience a far deeper slump than previously anticipated as the coronavirus pandemic hammers businesses, causing a wave of mass unemployment. Economists led by Jan Hatzius expect the world's largest economy to shrink an annualized 34% in the second quarter. Beer sales jumped 34% in the third week of March, well ahead of pantry loading expectations. This according to Credit Suisse, which cites Nielsen data. Anheuser-Busch InBev shares, they are trading higher today. The ADR is up by 2.6%. We've got Molson Coors, ticker TAP. It is down 3.9%. And Boston Beer, that's a parent of Sam Adams Beer, ticker SAM, unchanged right now at 364.29. 10-year up 13.30 seconds, 0.68%. Gold down 2.6%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, 20.36 a barrel. Recapping equities lower, S&P down 44, down 1.7%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. For the halcyon days when we thought that maybe both sides could get along and get on the same page about building some infrastructure, now maybe we'll see it could happen. At least they're talking about it. You mentioned the story, and the headline's great. Trump dusts off infrastructure ideas, urges $2 trillion of spending. Alex Wayne joins us on the phone from D.C. He is our White House team leader. All right, Alex, so this is what it takes to get infrastructure done, an international health crisis?
I bet you guys didn't know it was Infrastructure Week again, did you?
And here we are.
Missed that on that
well
day.
Done. Well
March
played.
Calendar.
You've been keeping that one in your back pocket, haven't you, Wayne? I like it.
I already used it on TV, I have to confess.
Oh.
It's okay. Still, it's good. It's good. So is it going to finally happen?
You know, Rahm Emanuel back in 2008 had this famous line, I'm paraphrasing and sort of torturing it here, but he basically said, like, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste.
Yes.
That was during the financial crisis. I think Donald Trump sees an opportunity to get a long-standing ambition, maybe slip through Congress with as little pain as he'll ever experience. What has held up infrastructure for 3 years into his presidency is that he doesn't want to come up with ideas to pay for it. He wants to spend trillions of dollars building stuff, but he doesn't want to have to raise taxes or assess fees or any of that. Now he maybe has an opportunity to persuade Congress to do this thing without taxing anybody, just load it onto the deficit along with the $2 trillion we passed last week.
He has become FDR. That's what I'm going to say, right? Yeah. Ultimately, it's complete now.
Who knew? Yeah.
DJT. So, I mean, what's interesting is this notion that the way it's framed, of course, is and probably will be, this is a way for America, and this goes to the FDR comparison, a way to get America back to work, right? That's part of the sell.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and he is picking a good moment. I think the political terrain is a lot favorable for this right now. A lot of people in Congress are very nervous about the economy. They think the $2 trillion is not going to be enough, and that's not just Democrats. Ted Cruz was on Bloomberg Television yesterday saying that he thinks Congress, if the outbreak persists, and it will, Congress is going to have to act again.
Right. We've talked about multiple phases. We just got, that $2 trillion, stimulus package signed, and we're still dealing with, getting that out to the parties it's supposed to help out. And now we're talking about, phase 4, phase 5. So how likely is it that something like this happens? And I mean, for it to have an impact, right, Alex? I mean, it does have to be large. Did we lose Alex? Bloomberg News White House editor Alex Wayne. Maybe we can see if we can get him back real quickly. This is what happens when we're all working all over the place. But it's amazing how well the system works in general. But I have to say, Jason, I agree. In times of crisis, this is when you can get some things done and kind of get through because you get people on board, and especially when we're facing an economy that we're just not quite sure when we get on the other side of it. How strong will it be? How quickly will it come back? And what can we do to make sure that we do get maybe not a V-shaped recovery, but maybe a U that gets us back to work and back to normal as soon as possible?
Well, and one of the interesting things about infrastructure, it seems, is that the arguments are really about the spending. Alex Wayne is back with us, and Alex, one of the things that I was just starting to say is this notion that the spending is really the issue. No one can really make an argument of like, no, the infrastructure is fine. Anybody who has driven on a road or gone to an airport in the United States knows this is a problem that needs to be solved, right? Only about 40 seconds left here.
Absolutely. I mean, but plenty of Americans travel internationally. These gleaming new airports that put ours to shame. There's a lot of desire to do this. It's the whole argument in Washington is whether it needs to be paid for, not even how to pay for it, but we've got to get over the hump of whether we're going to pay for it or not, or whether we're just going to put it in a deficit.
Or just embrace MMT. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. I know, really putting that.
I have to say, House Speaker Pelosi did mention broadband and water projects as examples of infrastructure works that could be relevant to the virus response. She mentioned that on MSNBC. So lots of things being discussed. Bloomberg News White House editor Alex Wayne, thank you so much. These guys are working really hard. Lots of news coming out of Washington and keeping us up to date on it, Jason.
All right. Well, coming up in just a little bit, we're going to catch up, speaking of Washington, with Robert Reich, former labor secretary. He's going to talk about that initial stimulus, what it means in terms of effectively bailing out companies, whether we should be doing it. Spoiler, he doesn't think we should. He's got some ideas and a new book that he's going to tell us about. Looking forward to that conversation. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey there, Bob.
Jason, Carol, good day. They've been trying, governors and other officials across the country, striving to find something hopeful to say about progress against the coronavirus pandemic. But this has been an especially tough day to do that for some public leaders. The deepening crisis here in New York, 1,500 now dead, hit close to home for Governor Andrew Cuomo, as he disclosed that his brother, CNN host Chris Cuomo, is infected with COVID-19.
He's a really sweet, beautiful guy. And he's my best friend. My father was always working, so it was always just me and Chris.
Cuomo predicted Chris, in the governor's words, is going to be fine, but added, teary-eyed, that his brother is praying he hasn't infected his wife and daughters. He will continue his nightly program from the basement of his home, where he is now under self-quarantine. And as the number of cases in New Jersey nears 19,000. Governor Phil Murphy is reporting 2,000 additional cases today and 267 total deaths across the state.
The disease has taken service members, first responders, coaches, loved ones, many friends, and too many New Jerseyans. And sadly, we know that this number will grow.
And so it remains across the country and around the world. The U.S. death toll from the coronavirus climbed to past 3,500 today, now eclipsing China's official count. Spain had its deadliest day yet in the coronavirus outbreak. President Trump wants to refocus on infrastructure. He's asking Congress for $2 trillion to build and repair roads, bridges, and for other public works projects. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen. The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you, I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go until we wrap up the quarter. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ are all trading lower, close to the lows of the day. Looking at a 39-point drop right now in the S&P 500 index at 2586, down right now by 1.5%. For the quarter, the S&P is on track for a 20% decline. We've got the Dow down 351 points, now lower by 1.6%. NASDAQ down 83. That is a drop of 1.1%. 10-year up 15-30 seconds with a yield of 0.67%. Gold is down 2.5% right now, $39 lower at $15.82 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude pushing higher today, up 1.4%, $20.38 a barrel. Bottom line, stocks extending losses in late trading. S&P lower by 40. That is a drop of 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's check in for the Drive to the Close with our old pal Alan Zaffron, founding partner and co-CEO of IEQ Capital, joining us on the phone from Foster City, California. Well, Alan, the last time we talked to you was a very different time, and I do wonder, in the interim, what's been going on? How are you feeling? How's your family doing? What's it like in your neighborhood, in your town?
Jason, we're home sheltering. I got to tell you, we're living. It's kind of interesting because what you watch on television, what you hear is absolutely terrible, but you're sitting in your home, you're with your family. When this is all said and done, it's a horrible health crisis. It's a horrible economic event. In the eyes of an 8-year-old, playing board games and having family meals at home, as long as they're safe, here in an affluent area like Foster City, might be the best time of their life. So that's the silver lining on what's clearly a dark cloud. But I can tell you, people are anxious.
Yeah.
And this event, Jason, is so different than I think about 2008 because it's personal. It's personal. It's affecting everybody directly, and people know people who are being adversely impacted health-wise too. That's what makes this one really difficult.
Well, and it's funny, or not so funny, but we've been having discussions about the longer-lasting impact of the virus, and I do wonder whether it's in telemedicine or whether it's online learning, or I don't know. Even a lot of us are working from home. I do wonder about the social nets and safety nets that are not part of our society. Alan, I do wonder about the longer-lasting impact, and I'm just curious if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're going to learn that redundancy is important. We're going to learn the importance of capital expenditures, both from a healthcare perspective as well as from a technology perspective. I pity the business soul who thought his internet was going to work well when he got home and realized it wasn't running at the same speed as the office. We're going to be far more attentive to the need to not allow a pandemic like this happen again. Now, whether we have the political willpower and the economic ability to put in place those things we need to do to build up the infrastructure to deal with the pandemic in the future, we will see. But in the moment, it seems like that's going to be something that's going to be done. What you're going to see, too, is in the financial markets, it's already playing that way. Obviously, the way some stocks are working. But you're going to see pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies are going to garner greater interest from the investment community. Clearly, large cap, high balance sheet, strong balance sheet tech companies are going to be well positioned because we're just going to continue to see all things equal. Certainly until this virus seems like it's safe to get past it, you're going to see more of a domestic focus, more of an inward focus, more of to make sure that everyone's got their own personal safety net as well as a business having a safety net. That's kind of the big theme in the short run.
Well, and that safety net point is so interesting too, Alan. And, we're going to talk in just a little while with Robert Reich, the former Labor Secretary, as you know. And, he's going to make a pretty strong argument, I believe, against, sort of propping up a lot of companies, call it a bailout, call it what you want. But part of this rainy day point, I think, is really important to the extent that a lot of the criticism that's been leveled against companies, whether they're in the airline industry or elsewhere, is, listen, they spent this money on buybacks, they spent this money in ways that weren't essentially saving for a rainy day. Now, this is beyond a rainy day, of course, and yet I do wonder whether that behavior will change, or whether, given this stimulus is sweeping in, whether companies will be like, no, that's cool. They'll help me out if I need it.
You're touching on a really important point. Unfortunately, our stock market's built on quarterly profits.
Yeah.
And so we have a mismatch. Businesses should be run for the long run. Stocks should be bought for the long run. And yet we play this game matching how a company's performing every 90 days. And did it match the earnings estimates? And unless we're going to restructure the way in which we calibrate and measure public company performance, I don't think you're going to see a change ultimately in corporate behavior. Buybacks are just another way to prop up earnings per share. I do think it is probably well suited if the government's going to bail out a business, they should put in place measures to ensure that the businesses are there to support other constituents like employees and customers as much as the executives. So I understand why they would do that. They have to make sure that they can still create a compensation system that attracts competent, efficient, effective managers to run those businesses properly. That's the other side of the coin. If you don't allow those businesses to be running by people who are compensated enough for the hard work they do, you're going to create a business that doesn't operate efficiently or well, and that will also have a longer-term negative economic impact. So it's complicated. There's multiple sides to every issue.
No, yeah, it is complicated, but I do wonder, and again, Robert Reich is going to bring up this point, but, Alan, as you know, I mean, when you think about influence in Washington, it's not the individual walking down the street, it's the large and deep pockets of corporations and, their lobbying groups. And so you do wonder whether when we do have these stimulus packages that are drafted, that they definitely sway and lean, on the sides of often big publicly held companies.
I don't disagree, and the optics look terrible politically. On the other hand, I think there is an argument.
But it's not just optics, right? It's really actions that are actually taken.
Yeah, and the counter argument would be we'll pick on the airlines. In the absence of a bailout of the airline industry, I'm not sure that they could survive, which gets back to the point, why were they buying back shares? But if you've built your business with ample amount of debt and you have a cyclical business, you're going to go out of business, at which point you're going to have a much greater cost to society. So we may be right. We shouldn't bail out the executives and the airlines. The problem is we've got a lot of people who are now on unemployment insurance, and it's hard to retrain them and find them new jobs. You can't win either way. So you've got to find a middle ground. But really the emphasis, I think, is to the degree if you're going to be punitive and eliminate various industries, the economic damage could be significantly greater than we realize. We could have a sustainably high unemployment rate. We'd be running large deficits to support millions upon millions of people. It would impair our ability to borrow effectively and would actually create havoc for the financial system. So as bad or onerous or painful as it may feel to bail out some of these industries, some of them are so significant to the economy. In the absence of doing something to prop them up and support them, it would cause a much greater, longer-term economic damage that would take much longer to work through.
Right. All right. Unfortunately, we're going to leave it there. I feel like we're just getting warmed up. Alan Safran, you're going to have to come back and hang out with us virtually. And, maybe before too long, you'll be visiting us in New York, or we'll be out west. Thank you so much. Founding partner, co-CEO of IEQ Capital, on the phone from Foster City, California. Thoughtful, as always, Carol Masser. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, coming up on the close of trading. This is Bloomberg.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights.
And here we go. Now it's underway. Cover on Rowan. Wait a second.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with the TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis of the latest WrestleMania, turn on the WWE podcast. Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
It's good to be here tonight. It's an empty building.
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. March 31st, 2004, New York Yankees starter Kevin Brown becomes only the second pitcher in MLB history to have beaten all 30 teams.
Got him over the outside corner. An 11 strikeout night for Kevin Brown. They win it on the arm end of Kevin Brown here tonight. Overwhelming performance by Brown.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Except for the energy names.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Lab.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It is on to the second quarter. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all selling off on this Tuesday. For the quarter, the S&P 500 index dropped 20%, lower today by 42 points, down 1.6%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 413 points, lower by 1.9%. The NASDAQ Composite Index declined 74 points. Today, that was a drop of 1%. So again, for the quarter, first 3 months of the year, S&P 500 Index lower by 20%. Stocks extended losses in late trading after rising 17% over the past 7 days, as the S&P 500 Index had its worst quarter since the financial crisis. Treasuries rose. Today, the 10-year up 16/30 seconds, the yield there 0.62%. So how to manage a portfolio in this environment? What do you do? Emily Rowland is head of capital markets research at JH Investments.
Dollar cost averaging here into a balanced portfolio makes a lot of sense. There's a few catalysts that we're looking at in order to shift to a more risk-on position. Clearly the number of COVID-19 cases in the U.S., we want to see that peak. It just doubled almost yesterday. We want to see that economic data look like it's trying to form a bottom.
More big, well-known retailers are announcing furloughs for workers or extending store closings, including JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, Urban Outfitters, and Guess. Retailers are halting pay for much of their workforce while preserving some benefits. So again, a down day for the U.S. stock market with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. This headline to pass along to you from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Dow Jones is reporting that Xerox will end its hostile takeover bid for HP. Again, repeating that headline. headline, according to Dow Jones, Xerox will end its hostile takeover bid for HP. Recapping, S&P down 42, down 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Something's called movers and shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Messer and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, everyone. Time to take a look at your movers and shakers on this Tuesday afternoon. As Charlie mentioned, wrapping up the quarter here, the first quarter of 2020. So what did that mean? The S&P is now down 20% for the year. We were down a lot more than that at our lows because of concerns over the virus. But right now we're down about 20% for the first quarter and really year to date, of course. NASDAQ down 14% there in the first quarter, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average a decline of 23% in the first quarter. Excuse me. Of 2020.
All right, Carol Masser, let's, you okay there?
Yeah.
Maybe just take a sip of water. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the individual names. The retailers getting crushed again today, Carol. And, we've been talking about this, both Macy's and Kohl's among your worst performers there, furloughing workers. We had the news yesterday about Macy's. More than 100,000 people being furloughed there. We just don't know what's going to happen next. And I think the more states push out these dates of, schools being closed and working from home and all that, the longer these companies and these retail outlets are going to be closed.
It's like what we saw during the financial crisis. If you were vulnerable going into the crisis, it was less likely that you were going to come out well on the other side. And I think that's what's being exposed here. Those that are the most vulnerable within our publicly held corporate community, those who are independents, they're going to have a tougher time coming back. That's certainly what the stimulus packages are going after. But nonetheless, Macy's having a tough time. Your number 4 decliner in the S&P down 8.6%. Kohl's also seeing a bunch of selling. That stock was down nearly 9%, Jason, in today's session. And then we had one of the cruise names was certainly in the news, Carnival.
Yeah, absolutely. That stock down, and it's $6 billion they're going to need, right?
Yeah, in terms of, and looking to tap the financial markets to help it out. Carnival was actually up about 3%.
Oh, was it up? Oh,
yeah,
good.
in today's session. So some enthusiasm that they could tap the credit lines. Let's talk about the VIX.
Yeah, let's talk about the VIX. That's what I was looking at. The VIX down 6.8%, ending up at 53.22. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson, double shot with you today. Talk to us about your chart of the day.
It's all about dividends, Jason, and how they're coming down, according to Jefferies' chief global equity strategist, Sean Darby. And among the indicators he looked at is just what's happened to the dividend yield on the S&P 500. You go back to February 19th and look at where the yield moved from there when the S&P 500 set its record. And you saw a jump of as much as 85/100ths of a percentage point. It got to 2.71% last week. That was the highest since April 2009. And whenever you see dividends rise like that, it raises a question of whether there are going to be dividend cuts to follow. We've already seen a few of them. And basically, they're anticipating more to come, given what's happening at companies and the need for cash at this point. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Right, and just before the close, we heard from Barclays and Santander UK suspending dividends. Barclays saying it's not going to pay its interim dividend for 2020. All right, great chart, Dave. Let's talk about your stock of the day.
Seritage Growth Properties, Carol. It's a real estate investment trust that owns 212 sites, mostly retail stores. The ticker is SRG. Now, hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert serves as chairman. He spun off the REIT in 2015 from Sears Holdings, which he ran at the time, and his ESL Partners Fund almost tripled its stake this month through an equity exchange. And Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is also involved with Seritage. Berkshire bought 2 million shares after the spinoff, which it still owned as of March 1st. And in 2018, Buffett's company provided a $2 billion loan. Most of Seritage's locations were initially occupied by Sears Holdings department store chains, Sears and Kmart. All but a few were closed after Sears Holdings went into bankruptcy in 2018. Now, the REIT had to find new tenants or redevelop the sites. That process is underway, but the coronavirus's effect on retailing certainly set it back. And you look at Seritage today, and the shares were up almost 29%. That just kind of cut the stock's losses for the month of March, down 73.5%. That was the steepest drop out of 35 stocks in the Bloomberg REIT Retail Index.
Wow. I have to say, I looked at that when you initially sent it over, and I was like, the heck is this stock? And then the Sears connection is a really, really interesting one. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Always good to get your perspective via the charts and the stocks of the day. Well, coming up, Carol Masser later this hour. Robert Reich has got a new book, and guy's got some hot takes. I mean, that's sort of how he rolls, right? I mean, he's not a shy guy.
No, and it's very provocative. And I think, but I've been hearing this debate too about these stimulus packages and the aid and the assistance, especially to publicly held companies that may have done, maybe, between buybacks and maybe using their money in different ways that folks said were not maybe, creating their own little safety net to have just in case of times of trouble. And, what's the responsibility of a government? Do we believe in capitalism? Do we not? Or, this is really a crisis of individuals, he argues. So we should be helping out individuals. And many would have, to some extent, also made that argument during the financial crisis as well, if you think about all the people who lost their homes.
Well, Alan Zaffron, waded into this with us just right before the close. And, part of what he was saying is, look, if you don't somehow bolster these companies directly, there are implications for individuals as workers, as communities. And, so it's complicated. But
let's hope those companies then use that money that the government is providing to really take care of their workers.
Yep. No, right? Exactly right. Exactly right.
Just saying. I know.
I'm with you. Listen, I didn't read your thesis, but I believe it. All right, let's get to Ed Baxter in San Francisco. He's got your world and national headlines. Hey, Ed.
All right, Jason, thank you. Focus of today's coronavirus updates from leaders has been on people stepping up to help one another. In New York, Mayor Bill de Blasio says a Billie Jean King Tennis Center will soon house 350 hospital beds, and that others as well are stepping up.
No one, I literally have not heard anyone, we say we need your building, I've not heard anyone say no. Everyone understands what time it is.
And he says 500 more EMTs coming to the city, some already there. Having said that, deaths have exceeded now 1,500. Apex is still weeks away. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom is starting a new initiative
to significantly increase our connectivity to our seniors, to check in not just for wellness checks related to food and medicine, but the deep anxiety people are feeling, being isolated at home, and the loneliness people are feeling at home.
Partnering with ARP and with several other groups of neighbors reaching out to 5 people daily to make sure that they are okay and be able to deliver to them if they have needs. This while the governor says he continues to search the globe for ventilators to meet the demands of what is said to be the coming surge. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci says the data as of today, and possibly not tomorrow because it changes daily, is slight flattening of the curve of severe cases of the virus.
You're starting to see that the daily increases are not in that steep incline. They're starting to be able to possibly flatten out.
But
we hope, and I believe it will happen, that we may start seeing a turnaround. But we haven't seen it yet. We're just pushing on the mitigation to hope that we do see that turnaround.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air, and a quick take by Bloomberg in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
There are times when you have to go it alone. But these should not be those times.
With a medical crisis, can any other central bank execute?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Walk me through the dynamics that are going to shape the euro in the coming months.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
Do we have the ability to coordinate with this virus?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
When things move this quick, do things break?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights.
And here we go. Now it's underway. Cover on Rowan. Wait a second.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with the TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis of the latest WrestleMania, turn on the WWE podcast. Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
It's good to be here tonight. It's an empty building. But
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
One of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking. Now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelota. Losing day to wrap up a losing quarter. S&P down today by 42 points, down 1.6%. For the first 3 months of 2020, the S&P fell by 20%. Dow Industrials lower today by 410 points, down 1.8%. Nasdaq down 74. That was a drop today of just about 1%. So stocks moving lower, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average having a loss in the quarter that has not been seen since 1987, as the pandemic almost certainly plunges the U.S. economy into a recession. The 10-year up 16/30 seconds, the old 0.67%. Gold down 2.8%, 15.77 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 1% to $20.27 a barrel. Repeating our earlier headline, Xerox Holdings ending its more than $30 billion tender offer to buy larger rival HP. This, according to Dow Jones, citing people familiar with the situation. Recapping, losing quarter, losing day as well, with the S&P down 42, down 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, we have been asking the smartest people we know in the markets what to make of all of this. And there are a few out there who are smarter or better performing than Tom Plum. He is the president and chief investment officer of Plum Funds, joining us on the phone from Madison, Wisconsin. We enjoy spending time with him when he's in New York, but happy to catch up with him as we're all, I believe, or the vast majority of us, working from home. Tom, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Jason. It's been much nicer when I'm able to be there with you, but here we are in my basement office in Madison, Wisconsin.
Well, tell us about that. I mean, tell us how it is out there, especially when we get to talk to folks outside of our little bubble here in the epicenter, the unfortunate epicenter of this virus outbreak. How is this looking from Madison?
I think, obviously, people are just sitting watching the news. I mean, there's a reason why this was the steepest first quarter drop since Charles Dow and Edward Jones first published the Dow Jones Industrial Average 124 years ago. Everyone is in a crazy time. We're watching what's going on. We're concerned. We're watching these numbers, and really nobody knows what to make of it.
Yeah, I agree. Because the logical side of your brain, Tom, says, okay, when we get on the other side of this, people will go back to work, people will go back to spending money, the economy will come back, but it's hard to see certainly from where we are. And I was just looking up some numbers I think you guys have in Wisconsin about 1,300 or over 1,300 cases, and you've had about 16 deaths or so. So, you're certainly, like the rest of the country, not immune from what's going on. How does this potentially change our world longer term? You're someone who has seen crises, seen different market cycles. Things do change, and sometimes those changes come out of situations like this.
Absolutely. Carol, first of all, people keep wondering about whether or not we've seen the bottom, and I don't know if anybody will know. And historically, you don't really ever know until 6-9 months after the fact, and you look in a rearview mirror, because at the bottom, you still have to keep open for the fact that there might be more news that would be worse than what I actually can think of right now. But having said that, I think that the stock market is starting to show some signs of bottoming and going through that process. But historically, when we've gone through these crises, it's been caused by these excesses in the economy, and you've seen companies that were part of that excess would end up being the ones that were punished the worst. But as you were saying earlier, Carol, the companies that were already distressed because of these secular trends, these issues that we've had, those are hit much harder right now than the rest of the economy. Things like Macy's and these retailers, for example, are just getting decimated.
Right. But I do wonder, Tom, so do we let capitalism kind of make its way? Because there are just companies that aren't going to maybe last for the long term anyway. I wonder how you approach this.
Well, I don't think that it's up to me or anyone else, but I do think that it is going to happen, that the companies that have been weak will never return to where they were, and certainly we're going to change how we do things. And some of those things that we're going to be changed are really just a continuation and an acceleration of the trends that we already were seeing. We're going to have a continuous use of the digital economy. It's not going to be replaced. It's not going to revert. And in fact, we're probably going to see all these things accelerate. Who out there thinks that when the economy returns, and I do believe it will return at some point, that we're going to go back to the malls as opposed at the expense of Amazon, for example? Who's going to go back to using cash and checks instead of the electronic payment systems? Those things are just not going to happen. And in fact, the companies that have been the strongest coming into this, and I think you've seen that, for example, Microsoft is actually flat year to date in this type of environment because they're the company that has been benefiting from everything else, and they'll continue to grow faster than the rest of the economy.
Well, and looking across some of your big holdings here, Tom, Microsoft is up there, Visa, MasterCard, obviously on that payment side that you're talking about. Alibaba, I believe, if you still have a big chunk of that, is an interesting name here, especially given I know that you're very smart, well-educated about the Chinese market. Only about 40 seconds left here. What's the case for Alibaba?
Well, Alibaba, again, is Amazon on steroids for China. And they provide all the access to the services that you would get from Amazon purchasing, but they also add other apps for ride sharing and all these other types of things that we see from different applications from the digital economy here in the United States. So China is definitely going to continue that trend, and they're good. And Amazon is the leader there. It's basically growing almost twice as fast as Amazon is in the United States.
I just want to say, Tom Plum, thank you so much. The Plum Balance Fund, the reason we love talking to Tom, it's in the 98th percentile for the past 5 years. It beats just about every other fund in that category and returning on average annually nearly 6%. So it's just, we love talking to him. Just love it.
He's great.
The performance is there. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The day that ended the worst quarter since 1987 for the Dow, which fell 23% over the past 3 months, and the worst since 2008 for the S&P. It was one of those be grateful for small favors days. A Jefferies money manager notes trading was more stable, and losses didn't finish below 2%. They pulled back at the last minute. The Dow fell 1.8%, 410 points. The Nasdaq about 1%, 74 points. The S&P 1 0.6%, 42 points. Even a move from President Trump that some businesses had pushed to put off for 3 months. Payment of some tariffs did nothing for investor sentiment. They're waiting for March job numbers to come out later this month. A group of 9 Democratic senators wants U.S. airlines to issue full cash refunds to customers who've canceled flights due to the coronavirus. Reuters reports they noted Congress approved $25 billion in cash grants for the industry. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you, I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a great way to discover the latest and greatest sports audio on TuneIn? It's easy. Just make sure push notifications are enabled on your phone to receive recommendations of sports talk radio and podcasts, along with important breaking news updates.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly. Looking forward, Jason, big time to our next guest.
We are. It's going to be Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor. Can't wait to get into that. First, Charlie Pellet's got an update on what's going on after the close. Hey, Charlie.
Well, first of all, Jason Kelly, let me go ahead and recap what happened for the quarter, because this past 3 months, who would have dreamed where we ended the quarter with the S&P down 20%, especially since the gains we saw early in the year. S&P down 42 points today, dropping 1.6%. Dow Industrials down 410 points today, down another 1.8%. And NASDAQ lower by 74, a drop there of 1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average, by the way, had fell to a level not seen since 1987, as the pandemic almost certainly plunged the U.S. economy into recession, with the Dow down 23% over the past 3 months. 10-year up 19.30 seconds, looking at a yield of 0.66%. We've got gold down 2.8%, 15.77 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude had an up day, advancing by almost 1%, up 19 cents a barrel to $20.28. So again, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ Composite Index all moving lower today. Recapping on the U.S. stock market here, S&P 500 Index lower by 42 points, 10-year up 19.30 seconds. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.9%, $20.28 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, as you know, the U.S. government signed a massive stimulus program last week. It included about $500 billion for hard-hit businesses. That was phase 3. The government now looking at phase 4. Former Labor Secretary and professor at the Goldman School of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley, Robert Reich argues that there is no reason to bail out big companies. He also has a new book out, The System, Who Rigged It, How We Fix It. He joins us now on the phone near Berkeley in the Bay Area. So, Robert, nice to have you here with us. Tell us a little bit about your writing and why you think the government shouldn't be bailing out big companies.
Well, we need all of the taxpayer money we possibly have right now for individuals. That bill that was signed into law Friday night, it provides $1,200 per person, just a one-time payment. Now, I don't know how many people listening to this program can get by for very long on $1,200. The typical American earns about $1,000 a week and has expenditures that are just about that much per week. But $1,200 is not going to extend nearly far enough in this pandemic, which is estimated to be 2 months, 3 months, possibly even 4 months. On the other hand, we agreed, or at least provided in that bill, for $500 billion of bailouts to very big companies, including airlines and Boeing and a lot of other big companies and industries. Here's the issue. I think we should have learned this in the big bank bailout of 2008. These companies have been in bankruptcy many times before. They know how to use the bankruptcy laws to get to reorganize their debts. It's not as if they have no collateral. They have a lot of assets. I mean, the airlines have planes and landing slots. They're going to be worth a lot once the economy is back on track. The ships, the cruise ships, the hotel industry. I mean, you talk about assets. These organizations, these corporations have very, very large assets, and yet individuals have a great need right now. So I'd say rather than bail out companies, let's bail out people. If there is going to be a fourth coronavirus relief bill coming up, and it looks like there will be, let's focus it on people rather than on corporations.
Well, and I want to talk to you about that fourth bill because it's going to include some infrastructure. I really want to get your thoughts on that, Bob. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you, because I think this speaks exactly to what you write about in your book. I mean, clearly part of what's going on here is the system is set up to do exactly what you described as the wrong thing in many ways, which is companies have an inordinate amount of power and influence in Washington to get that $500 billion, right?
Exactly, and that's the problem. Now, you would have thought in times of national disaster, emergency, certainly in wartime, all of those old power relationships are suspended, and companies understand, and the government understands, that we've got to make the first priority human beings and safety. But this time around, we didn't quite get there. Now, there are some things in the bill that are good. The unemployment insurance, $600 over and above the unemployment people are eligible for. That's a step in the right direction. But if there is a fourth bill, let's just not worry about big companies. Let's worry about small businesses and individuals and families. They're the ones that need the help.
Well, and you know what's interesting, because we've been having this conversation, Bob, with a lot of our guests here, and some say, well, you can't let these companies go down. You know, who could have guessed this black swan, right? Nobody could have been prepared for it. I mean, what do you say to them? And these folks will also say, you know, these companies employ a lot of workers, so by taking care of these companies, we're taking care of the workers. What's your response?
Well, the companies are laying off workers right and left. In fact, this week, big companies are laying off probably several million additional American workers, in addition to those who were laid off last week and the week before. So what is the point of taking care of big companies that will exist? I mean, these companies, United Airlines isn't going anywhere. American Airlines isn't going anywhere. These companies, 3 or 4 or 5 months from now, are still going to be there. It's the height of folly to think that these companies can't take care of themselves. And again, just if we're talking about the airlines, every major airline has gone through bankruptcy over the past 20 years, at least once, in order to rearrange its debts. And its creditors know how they do it, and its creditors are willing to let them do it because of all the assets they have. These companies are they're a bunch of contracts. They are a bunch of executives, top executives, and they are some big investors. But none of those requires or deserves a bailout, particularly at a time when so many individuals and so many families are being hard hit. So hard hit. This is a health emergency. Not only do we want to get income support to people and families, we want to get health care support to people and families who need it. And we ought to do it immediately.
All right, we're going to hold the conversation for just a couple minutes. Bob Reich is going to stick with us, former Secretary of Labor, now a professor at the Goldman School of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley. He's out on the West Coast and has been kind enough to stick around for a few more minutes to continue the conversation. And I want to pick up exactly where he left off, talking about healthcare and jobs and some of the inequalities that we're seeing there, because it is so important. And, you know, this whole notion of how companies use their money is a really important one as well, Carol.
Well, and we saw individuals being left behind big time during the financial crisis. Yeah. And so you do wonder why maybe this is what we're doing once again. So we'll continue that conversation in just a moment. In the meantime, let's get back to world and national news headlines with that. Ed Baxter in San Francisco.
All right, thank you, guys. Bob is a guru out here, by the way, in the Bay Area. He really knows it. In the fight against coronavirus today brings tragedy and hope. In New York, death toll now exceeds 1,500, with the apex still several weeks away. But Mayor Bill de Blasio says more and more private facilities are stepping up to support makeshift hospitals, and says more help is coming in.
We're going to have approximately 500 more EMTs and paramedics coming in from all over the country. 270 are here right now. and they're going immediately into action.
In California, Governor Gavin Newsom is forming a statewide program to help people check on seniors through 5 calls a day.
And we have to do it in a way that not only just checks in on someone to see how they're feeling, but be able to deliver something on the back end, not just a meal or medical supplies.
And that along with procuring more ventilators.
We have a call out to get another 5,000+ ventilators. Our goal is about 10,000 ventilators. We have requests in from the federal government, national stockpile, and we have requests out from all across the globe.
He continues to say the hope is to get the healthcare system ready to take care of the people who need it in the next few weeks. And Dr. Anthony Fauci says the question of whether to wear a mask should be coming very shortly.
When we get in a situation where we have enough masks, I believe there will be some very serious consideration about more broadening this recommendation of using masks. We're not there yet.
Spain says new infections have stabilized even as it reported its biggest death toll yet. Italy's new cases leveled at a 2-week low. Italy is preparing an emergency handout. And President Donald Trump has called on Congress to pass a $2 trillion infrastructure bill. Global news 24 hours a day. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter on Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested? TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about. Not all heroes wear capes, but most wear tights.
And here we go. Now it's underway. Cover. Rowan. 20 seconds.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with the TuneIn podcast. For expert analysis of the latest WrestleMania, turn on the WWE podcast. Or listen to the Steve Austin Show for no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities.
It's good to be here tonight. It's an empty building.
For these and more, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, I'll talk with our Washington correspondent about the many political battles being waged in the Capitol over how to deal with the new coronavirus.
You couldn't imagine a president personalizing a crisis with a virus, but somehow that's where we are.
Susan Glasser. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
With household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like.